First thing I want to do is make sure you guys speak into your microphones. We've had some issues and some questions. I'm telling you, all of you right now, so
Yes.
please try to speak as close to you can in the microphone.
Did you look at Brett White? Is that what you did?
I told you all looking.
All right, so open public comment on the proposed annual budget for fiscal year beginning April 1st, 2023 and ending March 31st, 2024. Any public comment, you can come up here and state your name and address and give us your comments.
Yeah, this house, we got 2 TVs up there. All right, Carolyn. It's hot now.
Do we have any comments for the budget in here? We're gonna wait, okay. All right, again, anybody from the public want to make a comment on the proposed fiscal year budget, April 1, 2023 and ending March 31st, 2024, come to the podium. If not, and seeing none, I will move on. Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Powell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember White,
Here.
Councilmember Powell,
Here.
Councilmember Pryan,
Here.
Councilmember Kraft, Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Goff,
Present.
Councilmember Lawson,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
We have a quorum. Personal appearances, A, 2023 Park Cruise Nights on Main Street.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just our annual quick presentation on the cruise night program. We put a side-by-side together with the dates and then the routes. Nothing's changed other than the change of time. Rather than 3 to 7, it's now 2 to 6. Traditionally, most of the cars are out of there by 6:15, 6:20. So for the benefit of staff, we're going to move that up to 6 o'clock and try to flush them out and move on. And just if there's a chance of rain, that we would rain out on the Saturday, the plan is to do it the next day. And if that particular Sunday rains out, we'll just see them next month. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you.
Welcome back.
Oh. What?
Welcome back.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
They've been gone for some
Yeah, I know.
time. Cars.
All right, ordinance A, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2023-13.
An ordinance approving the proposed fiscal year 2024 city budget as revised and appropriating funds from the revenues of the city.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Do you have anything?
I just wanted to thank everybody for their participation in the process for this year's budget. We started with public meetings in October and went through the process with some workshops on CIP and then operations, and we've made a lot of tweaks and adjustments throughout the time, and I think we've been pretty responsive to the public in this budget as much as we possibly could. So I'm very proud to present this budget, and hopefully we can move forward.
Go ahead.
I'll just add that the feedback I've received from the public has been positive about the process and transparency, and they liked how it was presented. So hats off to staff for that.
Anybody else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. B, motion approving both readings, or approving first reading of Bill 2023-14.
An ordinance amending sections 42-36 rates inside the city, 42-38 water rates for approved water districts or local governments, 42-39 rates for water consumed outside city, 42-296 sewer system user rates of the Unified Development Code of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will start the discussion off. We do have a Scribner's error throughout the document. Everywhere it says May 1st should be April 1st, so we'll make that change. So when you're voting, realize it's April 1st, not May 1st. All right, any discussion? Go ahead.
I thought we're not changing rates, so I guess it doesn't matter, but I always thought we changed our rates July 1, but is that not how it's been done in the past? Is it a budget year cycle?
Honestly, I don't know how it's been done in the past. You just said it was budget year. We are not raising residential rates for water or sewer. We are raising, other rates.
I guess we are technically raising rates for non-residents, so for commercial and outside the city, we're raising those, but
Correct.
I guess I'm just going back to past years. I thought it was always the July, but I might be.
You know, I've usually done it, not here, obviously, on the same year as the fiscal year, so it makes a lot of sense to.
It does make sense, so thank you.
I believe the trash is July 1st.
Trash is July.
Trash is July 1.
Trash is July 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I heard a voice. I heard a voice. I couldn't figure out who was talking.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, move for a second reading.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion on the motion for a second reading? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. An ordinance or motion approving second reading of Bill 2023-14.
An ordinance amending sections 42-36 rates inside the city, 42-38 water rates for approved water districts or local governments, 42-39 rates for water consumed outside city, 42-296 sewer system user rates of the Unified Development Code of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I will again add that the Scribner's error of May 1 should be April 1 throughout the document, and those changes will be made.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I may, looking at the current code of ordinances, it appears that in the past years, it's been really all over the map. There's some that were done in March, some that were done in May, and so there really isn't a consistency to, historically, to when we do the rates.
May or
But
fiscal year.
So let's just, fiscal year makes sense to me.
It does make sense.
Yep.
I mean, I think in the past years I've been doing this, we've always raised water rates this time, but sometimes we wouldn't put it into effect until July because we wanted to give people and so.
Anybody else? Hearing none, roll call.
Councilmember Lawson,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Richardson,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kraft, White,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Yes. Motion carries. C, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2023-15.
An ordinance approving a special use permit for an electronic message center sign at 305 North Scott Avenue in the city of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, information?
Yep, the Heart and Hand Thrift Store at 305 North Scott has requested approval of a special use for an electronic message monument sign. The sign does meet all the North Scott overlay sign design requirements as well as most monument sign requirements, except for the modifications to the height and setback. They're requesting to increase the height from 6 feet to 11 feet and the setback from 10 feet down to just under a foot to allow the sign to be installed at the same location as the previous pole sign. Added height will make the sign visible over parked vehicles as shown in the images in the staff report. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing on March 7th. No one spoke in favor or in opposition to the request, and the Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request. And the applicant is here this evening if there are any questions.
Go ahead.
On your thing that it says staff approved with conditions, so you're basically saying that everything that went through planning and zoning, the conditions have been met by the organization?
Correct, and the conditions are just there to clarify the modifications that have been proposed as well as the standard requirements that go along with the electronic message board in terms of the intensity of the lighting, the frequency of the change of the sign, and all those will be reviewed and stipulated with the sign permit as well.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Owen Lumber has a similar sign. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
They do.
Yeah. Looks fine to me. Thanks.
Anybody else? You got anything? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. D, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2023-16.
An ordinance of the City of Belton amending certain sections of the code to conform with Article 14 of the Missouri Constitution.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. As was discussed at the last work session, this ordinance updates the city's offenses sections in regard to marijuana, given the passage of Amendment 3, which enacted Article XIV of the Missouri Constitution, Section 2, and made some slight revisions to Section 1 that aren't applicable in this situation. What city staff and I have done is basically track exactly with the Missouri Constitution in regards to the use of marijuana in public places, the ability to possess marijuana in the amount stated in the Constitution, and the prohibition against driving while under the influence of marijuana. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Is the test for marijuana in the blood or in the body similar to an alcohol blood test?
At this time, there is not a blood alcohol style test for marijuana. That is why there is additional requirements regarding the observation of the person if they are deemed to potentially be under the influence of marijuana. And also Chief and I kind of have talked about this a couple times. There are certain officers that may have qualifications such as drug recognition experts, but also they are not mandatorily required by the Constitution. But to answer your question plainly, no, there is no blood alcohol level style test.
Okay. So it's kind of qualitative, not quantitative.
It's a little bit of both. So typically what you'll see is observation of the individual, maybe in regards to how they're acting, eyes, aroma, and then also a confirmation test that shows that marijuana was in their system.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Is there certain cut points in their system?
No, there is not, because again, the way that marijuana is in the system is significantly harder to determine if they were under the influence at any given time. It is instead just a test that establishes that marijuana is in their system, which is again why when determining if somebody is under the influence of marijuana, it takes additional steps such as observation of aroma and behavior.
That's what I was going to get to because of the length of time it's in your body. You know, you couldn't really say that it happened that night, so.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolutions. A motion approving resolution R 23-19.
A resolution creating a budget and finance committee for the City of Belton.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to bring this resolution forward to formally create a Budget and Finance Committee. This resolution does not have anybody named yet. We will bring a resolution forward in April to actually appoint members to this committee. The purpose behind the committee, obviously, is for us to look at our budgeting practice, how we budget our overall finance system, and how the budget is laid out, the funds, the use of funds, and we'll even look at things like our payroll schedule and everything, and bring some recommendations back to the council at large on steps we could take to make it more efficient and more transparent.
Any other? Just go ahead.
There's not any community representative?
It was not drawn up to have a community representative. If the council so chooses that that's a step we need to take, then I'm open to that conversation. We anticipate meeting quite a bit, to be honest. Not that someone from the public couldn't meet often, but I anticipate this will be a pretty frequent meeting for a little while to get everything lined out.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Be a motion approving resolution R 2023-20.
A resolution adopting a 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal years 2024 through 2028.
Present. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have, after our presentation, I have updated the numbers based upon the budget process. You'll notice on the summary sheet, that's page 3, row T5, I do have a Scrivener's error there, and a formula did not add up correctly. So I will correct that before it's posted online. And so it is basically the same document that I presented earlier to you, just with some budget numbers adjusted. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Go ahead.
Oh, in November, when we had this at a work session, one of the comments, maybe there were more than one, was one of the top 5 things that residents want are sidewalk improvements, but I didn't see anything in here. Maybe it's hidden in one of these, but if you could point out where it is, I'd appreciate it.
We don't have sidewalk improvements in here in mass. I know in the operations budget, we have a little bit of money for a sidewalk program that is a cost share program. That's the only new programming we have for sidewalks for this budget, including in the capital improvement program. Where we are with the sidewalks is we are in the process of not just studying, but taking essentially a poll of the sidewalks and trying to measure where we need them, where they're in disrepair, and then we'll be working on a plan from that. How we're going to fund it, we don't know yet.
Well, I would suggest, and I don't even know why exactly it's in here, but economic development, $450,000. How does that relate to capital improvement? Well, why couldn't that be reduced a little bit to make room for sidewalks? Because sidewalks are going to come up, hopefully, in the next 5 years, maybe not.
Yeah, that was from the ARPA funds that we had discussed previously in budget, last week or last meeting when we talked about the budget. Those are the ARPA funds for economic development. That's designed to be seed money for the potential to help us to essentially get some properties redeveloped in some specific areas that could help in our downtown core or North Scott area.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is there a way to indicate that sidewalks is on a priority?
Well, yeah, I mean, we are working on coming up with a plan, and we'd be glad to, if we need to bring in a committee that includes people from the public to help us prioritize. Once we determine the overall need, then we could do something like that to ensure that everybody gets to have some feedback.
Well, I guess too, it said someplace in here that this is reviewed annually. So if in the next 12 months, this committee or staff or somebody assesses sidewalk needs and comes up with a figure, then can this be changed? I mean, this is a
5-year plan, but we do it as part of the budgeting process every year, so it's a rolling 5-year plan. So essentially, next year we will be looking at the 25 through 29 capital improvement plan, and so the stuff that's already on here for 25 through 28 will roll onto that. We'll add 29. We can add and subtract things for next year. It's not set in stone at that point. The only thing set in stone from this specific program is the 24 expenditures.
Okay, so a year from now, when 29 is added and 24 is dropped off, any changes like adding sidewalks is not reserved for 29. It could be in 25.
We could add it any year we decide
Okay.
we can find the funding for it, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When do you anticipate North Scott to start?
Hopefully in about 3 to 4 months. We have the plans turned in and we're getting the environmental cleared right now. The environmental will be cleared in the middle of April. MoDOT's got to approve the plans, approve all the easements, and then they'll give us approval to bid the job. So it's going through their process to get it out the door.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. C, motion approving resolution R 23-21.
A resolution authorizing and approving a public service agreement between the City of Belton, Missouri and Downtown Belton Main Street, Inc. to provide public service support for 2023 events.
Present.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I have some significant issues with the June 30th to July 1st proposal. Parks is offering very similar programming 25 days before the first weekend of June. It's really similar to Summerfest, an annual Belton Parks event. So essentially we would be using taxpayer dollars to hold two summer events 25 days apart. To do an apples to apples comparison, Summerfest on June 3rd is $7,500, and it will include a cornhole tournament, pedal pull for kids, adult trike race, foam party, mascot mania, live music, fireworks, plus food trucks, vendors, and inflatables. The price tag on that is $7,500, 100% of which came from sponsorships. The proposal we're looking at for Downtown Belton Main Street's event, June 30th and July 1st, includes live music, inflatables, food trucks, vendors, and fireworks, and runs $40,000. $25,000 of which we're being asked to fund, even though Downtown Belton Main Street themselves are putting in $15,000. I haven't seen an element of this coming from sponsorship other than the city and Downtown Belton Main Street, so I do not support this proposal. Additionally, $6,000 in the $25,000 proposal is earmarked as miscellaneous or to be announced. So perhaps we'll see another proposal down the line that's a little more detailed, but with the similarity to parks programming, I don't support this.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I mean, I think we can support up to $25,000. I don't think we have to always give $25,000 just because it's in our budget. Doesn't mean we have to give all of it to them if they can't support the documents where that money's going. I saw some documents on here from some acts, and I think part of this was part of the budget process that we started back in October, November, trying to keep the 150th birthday party going that a lot of residents said they enjoyed. I think Carolyn, Diane, someone come up that we had almost 12,000 people on Main Street on one Saturday during that 150th birthday party. So trying to keep an event going that people wanted and people asked for, to keep it going. And I think giving up to $25,000 for this event to help them keep it going is something that I've been in favor of. I know Joe's brought that up to our attention back in October, November during the initial budget process, so I definitely support that. Do I wish that the parks and this organization could have come together and created something together? Absolutely. I wish we could always work together and be on the same page, because I think when we all come together, our events are going to be even better than what they are today. So I hope that in the future that can happen also.
Go ahead.
When this was initially raised, I was 100% for it. Then the next morning I woke up and I started thinking, well, if other organizations came to us and asked they wanted to do a party, would we give them $25,000? Like if Home Depot came to us and asked, we want to do a party in our parking lot, would we give them $25,000 to do it? And I had mentioned it to a couple of people, and I was told, no, we probably wouldn't. So then I started thinking, well, why are we giving it to one organization and not open to all organizations? So that's my one concern. I wish Parks was involved, because I think, so at this particular moment, that's my feedback.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, as recently as last meeting, we were told that it was that this hadn't been that no vendor for this had been chosen. And then all of a sudden now we have DBMSI agreement, and they did an excellent job on the 150th. I don't see why they wouldn't do a good job on this, but I don't know that it was ever open to other groups. I mean, well, in my brief experience here, when we spend money, we have we open it up to to several groups or several companies that can do the job. So I'm kind of along the lines of what Brett said. Also, I noticed that under the dates that they're doing things, I know that, and this might have changed too, but at the last DBMSI meeting, which I'm not on their board, but I go just to see what they're doing, they voted to have a Christmas event on November 25th, but I don't even see that on here. I only see December dates, so I think this is somewhat inaccurate. But so and maybe we can correct that, and maybe that would be okay. But right now, this doesn't look like an accurate document to me.
Is there anybody from Main Street here? Connie, can you come up here and speak to that? Come up to the microphone. Come up to the microphone, please.
I know that at our last downtown Belton meeting, it was agreed upon and voted on that we would continue to have the downtown Belton Main Street's Christmas event on the 25th, the same day that we have the Shop Small for Belton. And we have had a parade the past couple, 2 or 3 years. And we decided and voted that we would continue with that Christmas parade. That day, I understand, Norman, or Mayor, I'm sorry, that you all had decided to change the date of the tree lighting to December the 2nd. And at that point, I know that Gary Mallory was going to come and talk with you, Joe, and that we have a meeting coming up this coming Tuesday. So whatever the resolution was for that, we have not talked any more about it, but we went ahead and voted that yes, we would have the parade, yes, we would celebrate it on the Small Business Saturday on the 25th of November. If you all wanted to go ahead and have your event, then that was your deal. Now, what else would you like me
Does
to?
that answer your question?
Yeah, it sounds like exactly what I heard too at their last meeting. So. Yes, it does.
I didn't bring my notes. I mean, I've got my notes that I take minutes on, and that was what was decided and voted on. So if there's anything different, then, like I said, our meeting is Tuesday night.
Speaking of this specific event on June 30th and July 1st, which is a downtown Main Street merchant event, I believe it is.
Yep.
You guys have a budget,
We have
you approved budget?
We approved $15,000. That's
Okay.
it. That's it.
Go ahead.
Just to find some alignment with Councilmember Clark and Councilmember White's comments, I agree. The 150th was a great event. The turnout was great. I've shared the feedback with Parks that people like programming on Main Street. They like the musical acts. This is all things that, you know, if we had gone to Parks first and said, let's recreate it and gave them 25 grand, they could do it. You know what I mean? And as our events and programming arm of the city, they kind of should have first right of refusal. So not taking away from the 150th, that was meant to be a once in a 150-year party, and Belton's birthday is in August, so if we were looking to recreate that magic, the timing doesn't make sense for me. And then to Councilmember White's comments, I don't think we should be in a position to give grants if there's a budget surplus. I don't think putting on events or programming separate from parks makes sense. We do a lot of support in kind for these events with staff hours, and I'm happy to continue to support it that way, but like I said, this proposal doesn't make sense to me to support.
Go ahead.
I did also, if I could talk too, I just.
Sorry, you gotta say something. I don't always look up. So yell when
That's
you wanna
okay.
talk. Yell when you wanna talk. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Okay,
Angela.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I did just want to put it out there that I did bring this 150th Community Days type event to Joe about a week after the 150th proposal. And I really wanted, what I had spoken with Diane about and spoke with Joe about was having all of the groups that were involved in the planning of the 150th, being Parks, DBMSI, BCPI, Darren Jones, who helped plan the parade, all of those still coming together and creating something like what we did for the 150th and something like what we've always had for Community Days in the future. And that was kind of what I was under the understanding as to where we were going to go with that. I didn't consider what would happen if other, nonprofits wanted to be included, or that the possibility that DBMSI would want to do that all on their own. It is important to me that as a city, we're fair in how we offer any kind of donations. So I would prefer there to be a policy for how to apply for any kind of funding for events that, are going to encourage that economic development. I do think that an event like this would be a great opportunity, but I really would like to have a better policy in place if we were going to continue to do this.
Go ahead.
I want to go back to address Councilwoman Lawson's comments. I think we threw so much stuff at the parks over the last 3 to 5 years, and we keep throwing stuff at the parks. I mean, we gave them the car shows. Hey, we want to take this over. They took over Summerfest. They kept taking over everything. And to me, when you have an organization with volunteers and our employees don't have to keep working weekends, and I don't know how that affects their overtime budget or anything like that, but if a parks put it on, then all their employees got to be there putting it on. It's not a volunteer organization, it's a paid organization. Where this organization, everybody's a volunteer. And I know last year during the 150th birthday party, we did have Public Works up here doing trash and some stuff like that, and police officers that are being paid. We would have the same thing with this organization too, but I know there's a lot of people that Downtown Main Street Merchants got, the Chamber of Commerce and Diane got, to come out and actually volunteer their times to help put that event on. We moved the mayor's Christmas tree for that purpose, so employees don't have to work the Thanksgiving weekend. So, I mean, to keep throwing stuff at parks, as much as I love our parks and our park people, I mean, to me, it's if we can get a volunteer organization to put events like this on that bring people to downtown Main Street, I think that's a win. Parks want to be involved. Hey, I want them to be involved too, but it has to be what they want to do.
Yeah, I would agree that programming around holiday weekends, and I've spoken up about that here in council meetings.
4th of July weekend.
That's what I'm saying, is that that's not an ideal time to have to put staff hours. I like to protect people's holiday weekends. Additionally, if the proposal was for some programming that was remarkably different than what Parks offers, and they wanted to volunteer staff it, let's talk about it. But this proposal is so similar, and within 25 days, this just doesn't make sense to me. And not to mention the cost difference.
I mean, I'm not going to throw Parks in a bus, but I can guarantee you that I won't know who their entertainment is.
Well, let's give them $25,000 and have them book Tate Stevens.
Yeah.
Can I?
Go ahead. Go ahead, real quick.
One of the things was, downtown Belton Main Street has always tried to do our businesses on Main Street. Small Business Saturday is that 25th, is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That is our whole purpose, is to coordinate the Small Business Saturday with the parade, with the lighting, with everything else. Now, I don't know how many of you all have attended downtown Belton lighting ceremonies or the mayor's Christmas tree, but everybody thinks it's always been on Saturday. It has not. It was always the first Monday after Thanksgiving. That was what it was years and years ago. And, I know, because as BCPI, we put it on forever and ever, I think 40-some years. So people are like, well, we have, no. It has always been that. We changed it to coordinate so we could draw people to Main Street, have the lighting, have the parade, have the different events. The majority of the people that have worked, the city employees that have worked, have been the fire department, and most of them are the ones that are on duty. The police department, we tried to do with them when they were on duty. The park department, they were involved in collecting the canned goods and sorting the canned goods. That was their deal. They did that. So, you know, I think we're getting kind of out there and we're not pulling all of our thoughts together with some of this, but we're trying to promote Small Business Saturday and bringing people to Main Street. Unfortunately, if people have $500 to spend for Christmas, we need to try to capture that $500 on Main Street, Belton, not have them go to Lee Summit or to Overland Park or somewhere else. We need to try to capture that. For me, being a marketing person and having a retail business in the past, I want my customers before everybody else has a chance to get that money. So for me, I'm thinking on the 2nd of December, they've already gone to the Black Friday events, the small Saturdays, the other lighting ceremonies, and now we're gonna get leftovers. So if I've already spent $450 of my $500, we only have $50 less. So we are trying to get the people on Main Street as soon as we can to spend their discretionary income and go from there. That's what I wanna say. You know, we're gonna have the parade, it was already voted on, we're gonna have the parade on the 25th, unless something changes on Tuesday night, that's what we voted on. We're still gonna celebrate Small Business Saturday. Our merchants on Main have done that, Sally at Whistle Stop has done that for years, has been the one that organized that event for all the merchants on Main Street that wanted to participate. So that's what we're interested in. So, anybody else have any questions?
If I may, this is mainly about the June 30th, July 1st, because we're not. I'd like to make a couple of points. One point is that the $25,000 that was earmarked in the budget would not exist if it would not have been for a conversation we had when we were doing a budget workshop about this specific event. Okay? So the money wouldn't exist, so I don't think it would make sense for us to potentially open it up for others to apply for that money at this point, because that's not what the money was designed for. The second point I'd like to make is sometimes when you're planning an event like this, it takes some time there's a prolonged period of planning that must take place. If we're going to book acts, you've got to book acts months in advance. You can't wait till 2 months before the event and then decide, okay, yeah, we're going to go ahead and book you. They're going to be booked at that point. The reason I brought this up during the budget workshop the way I did was to try and get as much of a consensus as I could behind the support for this allocation. The folks that are planning this took that agreement and it wasn't a formal approval, yes, but that was a show of support by the council members at that time that said, yes, let's go do that. The folks that are planning this event went and booked acts. They've made some commitments. You can say they were acting ahead of what they should have been, and that's a fair point, but the reality of the situation is to book those acts, you better get out in front of it. So for us to come back now and say, well, we don't really like the process, I'm not sure that this is fair. Well, first of all, fairness is one of those issues that you have to consider. How many events have brought 12,000 people down to the main street? Summerfest is a great event. It doesn't bring 12,000 people down to Main Street. It's not on Main Street at all. And that's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Summerfest. It's a different type of event. It is not the same thing as what we're doing with this June 30th, July 1st event. So I would be wary if I were the council. You guys can decide this, obviously. I would be very wary of backtracking now on the $25,000 because that could have a domino effect that could negatively affect, one, our reputation when it comes to what we're supporting, and two, this event in and of itself could, I don't know this for a fact, but there's a good chance it goes away if we don't have the money for them to pay the bands. So I'm just... Let's be aware that all these are real issues.
I agree with you.
Angela, go ahead. Go ahead, Angela.
Thank you. Two quick things. One, my understanding when it was brought up at the meeting was that it was going to be all of the groups, the committee, that had originally planned that 150th, including the chamber. And I feel like that somehow then changed into it's Diane and Michelle and DBMSI, and that those other groups are no longer a part of that. So that is where my concern came, that I became concerned with all of that. My other question is this motion to approve that funding as well as provide the public support, the in-kind donation as well, or is that just
Yes,
those
it is.
other?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it's for both. Okay, thank you.
Are you done with me?
Well,
Okay, I'll wait.
stay there for a minute if you
Okay.
would. Go ahead.
I expressed my concern, and at the time, I'd like the 150 to continue. I was a little disappointed in, afterwards about how things are, some groups are being left out, some groups are in. I'm not going to back up, and I was a part of the yes in the work session. I'm not going to withdraw my yes, but I am expressing my concern that this is a city thing, and the cities, it doesn't feel like it feels like it's downtown controlling it, and it's not a city thing. Now, I'm not saying that's real, I'm just saying that's how it felt. That's how it feels when it comes across about who's planning it. And that bothers me. But I will not back, my yes was one of the reasons, one of the 8 reasons that we kind of said, yes, go for it. I'm not going to withdraw that yes. But I will be very cautious next time in jumping into
That's fair.
a yes, because I do think parks need to be heavily involved.
Go ahead.
I think going on what you said, Councilman White, is I think one of the things that Joe wanted to do is get it away from the city involvement other than helping them fund it. Because a lot of the stuff that we did with the 150 and the time commitment that our staff had to put in for that because it was a city event, we would like to keep it going. But again, without city staff doing it all. And I go back to what I said earlier. I mean, even at Parks, I mean, I think Parks wants to be engaged in this event. That's great, but it has to be on what they want to do also. And do they want to take on a 2-day event? Most of their events are 1 days, just like the greatest event to me is a Halloween day. Their Halloween trick or trunk or trunk or treat, and I don't know how many thousands of people they get to that, but they do a great job on that one. They do the car shows, and that's a wonderful event they put on. We just got dates. I mean, the car shows, I have people from all over the city that tell me they go to Belton on 3rd Saturday of the month, whatever that is, and they do great events, but I don't want to put them out there for a 2-day event. But they have to
Moving it away
decide
from
that.
the city doing this event is not the same thing as making sure that anyone that is wanting to do it has the opportunity to do it versus a particular group.
I will tell you this, seeing how much time they put in last year, if there's another organization that wants to put in that much time and put that much effort into it, they better come forward because I haven't found that person. I know Diane and Michelle put a whole lot of time, and that committee put a whole lot of time in there. So if somebody else has that, bring them to me.
I'm not saying there would be, but I'm saying the opportunity for it as opportunities for agencies to come forward is different than other agencies coming
Well, they can come forward after this too, if they think they could put on an event like this.
If I could make one more quick comment. It's not.
Hold on.
It's not uncommon for cities to support a big event for their community, okay? I've seen other cities do that, and they don't make it available for everybody. Now, if someone wants to come and say, yeah, I'm gonna bring an event that's gonna bring 20,000 people to a certain area that you think you're trying to build as not only your economic, but your cultural downtown that has a huge quality of life component to it, then yeah, let's bring it. Let's have that conversation. Maybe the city should be involved in supporting something like that. And so that's my point on this, is that it's not unprecedented for this type of support to go to these big events that have a huge community impact because let's be real, they don't happen all the time. That's why that's such a huge impact. Now, if someone else could do it and pull it off without the funding of the city, that'd be even better, but a lot of times that's just not the reality of it.
Okay. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
This is a comment then to the process, and this is not a process for developing a grant or letting other orgs come to us for money. I don't support that. But when you say that council expressed support, I went back and I watched the January 31st meeting, and the dollar amount figure originated with you, and you said 20 to 30. Councilmember Clark, you had originally said, yeah, we support them with staff hours and we do all this good stuff. We move barricades, and then you countered with 25, and that's where we've landed here. So the process criticisms I have are for us as a council, and Joe, you as city manager, that we don't end up in a situation like this again. Because there are big bumps in the road to how we got here from January 31st when it was first presented to council to we got the proposal 5 days ago. I have concerns about the proposal, and now our feet are to the fire because contracts were already signed.
Fair enough.
Yeah, when we, back in January or whenever, it was a generic event. Everybody wanted an event. I thought it was generic. Angela thought it was a group of people, but we all had it in our back of our minds. But what, like you just said, it was just simply a dollar figure for an event, period. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, when we were discussing the budget, I asked, well, is this open for other groups to put on? I'm not saying there's any other groups qualified, but, and I said, can even, somebody from New Mexico come in and say, I can give you a great job, a great party? And the answer was yes. So it's changed in the last 2 weeks.
Well, the answer was based on the budget. The allocating the money and putting the money in the budget are two different things, right? And so,
Right.
Technically, when we were discussing approving the budget, I didn't want to hold up the entire budget on a $25,000 conversation. So my point was, and it still stands, it's in the budget now. So if you guys decided collectively to dedicate that $25,000 to someone from New Mexico or some other event, you have that ability to do so because it's in the budget now.
Okay.
So that was my point at that time when we were discussing the budget. Now, that said, the context behind it, and I didn't want to get into the weeds then because we were talking about the budget, not talking about this event. The context behind it, again, was this $25,000 does not exist if not for the conversation we were having in our budget workshop about this potential event. And so if we had not had that conversation, there'd be no $25,000 earmarked, and then it'd be harder for us to pull off this event, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It makes sense.
Or any event, for that matter.
Go ahead.
I have no problem with what we decided to do with the money. Allison does have a point that there is a redundancy here, and it's too bad that the two couldn't get together and maybe put it on together as opposed to being in competition with each other within a month. That's the only situation I see that would help the parks and who.
Well, I think moving forward, hopefully we see the redundancy, and maybe the next year they can get together and want more time and come together and work out a deal and a plan. So
if it helps at all, I will be glad to fall on the sword of the process on this one and say, yes, we can do a better process on this for this or any event in the future, and that's fair, and I'll own that.
Yeah, and I'll take responsibility of not owning it either, so. Go ahead, Angela.
I just had a clarification question. The motion that we're voting on, that does include time from parks, doing items for them as requested, police, trash, things like that as well, correct?
The resolution that's proposed is that we will support 4 events that Main Street's doing throughout the year. And 3 of those, the support is what we do for almost any event that we give support to, which is almost any event that comes to us and says, hey, can you help us out? We provide some police support to ensure that there's the security and the safety. We provide some public work support for barricades and stuff like that. It's not over and above that necessarily. And it's really not much of a commitment from parks usually. That's kind of a separate thing that they would work out with parks. And so this resolution shouldn't necessarily affect parks at all. But it's essentially saying we're supporting those events in the normal way we support every event just about. And the meat of this resolution, though, is the $25,000 allocation for that event, June 30th and July 1st. They're just wrapped together because it's all one show of support for all of the events that Main Street's putting on this year.
Thank you. That makes more sense to me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could we modify our approval to $19,000 until the $6,000 worth of miscellaneous and TBA expenses are explained?
You wanna,
Yes, there could be a motion to amend at this point.
I mean, I feel like we have a responsibility to do, if,
I also want to point out that one of the reasons that I wanted to get this out of the city and into another entity's hands is last year, you'll recall, the original approval was for $30,000 for the event, and then the budget went up to $75,000 with the event, with the intention that the city would only pay $30,000 probably of that, and they'd try to raise the difference, right? Well, I think the city ended up being on the hook for about $44,000 of the event total, because any overages was going to become the responsibility of the city at that point, because it was a city's event. Now that another entity, Downtown Main Street, is taking on the responsibility for this event, any overages do not fall on the city's lap. It's a Downtown Main Street event, so if they go over budget, that's not our responsibility necessarily to cover. That said, I'm not saying that we shouldn't ask for clarification on this extra $6,000. I think that's a very fair question to ask. But I just wanted to point out.
should we,
Well, I guess,
should we change this to it is up to $25,000 and the city will only pay with?
the only thing I see is the miscellaneous is $2,000. I don't see six. I mean, if you're talking about who's gonna do the food and drinks for $2,000, it's to be announced who's doing it. Who they buying a tent from is $1,000, to be announced who they're getting a tent from. So it doesn't say they're not buying it or renting a tent or doing food, they just haven't got that vendor yet. Now, if you go to the very far right where they talk about miscellaneous, okay, there's $2,000 over there, they have in a miscellaneous budget for any type of overruns or something they don't see that they need, and I'm, whatever, but it's not six.
there's 3 labeled miscellaneous and 3,000 labeled miscellaneous and 3,000 labeled TBA.
There are 1,000 in entertainment.
Yep.
But the tent, just because they don't have
The vendor yet, yeah.
a vendor, doesn't mean they're not buying renting a tent.
Sure. In an effort to firewall this project from the 150th, because it was a great event and there is a process element there to do a retrospective, I didn't want to talk about the overages, but they were about 50% over budget. So as a new proposal comes in with the same organizers, I think it's fair that we're a little more critical and that the proposal is thorough. The statement of accounts at the end is, gives us peace of mind. That's not unreasonable.
Joe just said, hey, any overages, we don't have to worry about now. It's all on them.
I'm gonna tell you, you better worry about it, because we're going $15,000 and that's it. We donated $18,000 to the 150th, and we were within budget. And that's very important for us right now, to be within budget. We're paying for Cinco de Mayo, we're paying $15,000 on this event, we're putting on 2 or 3 other events that we're funding. So, we try to keep everything to budget. And I try to keep a running amount on that, a tab on that at all times. So, and Diane knew how much money that we had coming out of our budget at all times, because I kept track of it. So, if it went over, that wasn't my fault. That wasn't Downtown Belton Main
Nobody's blaming
Street
Main Street
fault.
for last year.
Huh?
Nobody's blaming Main Street
No, we're
for
not.
last year's overages.
We're not.
I'm just pointing out
I'm
that
just saying
it's a
what
Main
he
Street
said
event
is,
this year, not ours.
if there's
I know we
overages on this event, we don't have to worry about it because we donated our money and we're out,
Well,
so.
we're setting at $15,000 and that's it, so they need to stay within our $15,000 budget also.
That's an internal thing for them. That has nothing to do with the city as far as I'm concerned, because
Yeah.
they took their event to Main Street, and that's their.
So before my thought gets lost, and you standing there and we can continue, the reason that, shifting gears to Christmas, the reason that I made a decision to change the date from Thanksgiving weekend to the next weekend, twofold. I had city employees come to me and say, hey, can you change this? Because we can't be with our families on Thanksgiving. And then I had citizens call me and say, hey, is there any way to change this so we can celebrate Thanksgiving outside the city? Those were the 2 main reasons that I made a decision to change it. I've been talking with Gary. We haven't come to a 100% conclusion, but that's the 2 main reasons why I decided to make the change.
Okay,
So-
and I do know that you and Gary have
Yeah,
been talking.
we've been talking.
That I do know.
We
so.
haven't gotten anywhere yet, but we're getting there, so.
I just want everybody to understand, yes, we put in as downtown Belton Main Street, we put in 18,000, we were on budget. This year for this event, there's 15,000 and that's all. So,
All right, you can go sit down now.
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Tell her thing.
Yeah, I was getting there. Thank you too. I got interrupted before I could say it. Go ahead, Rob.
Okay, question. So this is, I'm trying to gather whether this is a city event or a DBMSI event. Sounds like it's a DBMSI event that the city, at least for one of the four, is contributing some money. And so, in the proposal, it says that DBMSI is on the hook for, getting permits and stuff. So, in the past, what I've been told is if it's a city event, then you don't need permits. The city can just do it. But with DBMSI doing it, they need permits. And so is that
The way,
Is that
the
the
way
way
this
it's-
resolution states that this is a DBMSI
SI?
event.
Okay, so it's just like when the soccer team wanted to do Main Street, it's the same rules that apply to getting
Yes.
permits and everything. Okay, and second, I understand and I appreciate that that the staff and everybody that works for Belton would like to be Thanksgiving, and I agree with that. I just think that we have a proposal that leaves out the date that DBMSI has already agreed to do something. So until they change that, I mean, and they don't have any events planned so far for 2nd, 9th, or 16th. So it seems kind of back-asswards to me to have those three in there and not, maybe we should just say a Christmas event instead of
I think we
all
can
those
come
four.
back and adjust this if we have to, clarify some dates.
Well, you on their website?
On who, I'm on, no, I just have the,
Oh, the agenda? Okay.
No, in here.
right.
No, I thought you were
Oh,
talking about
I'm-
their website or something like
No,
that.
no. There, well, I try to go to all our meetings and just take notes. And like Connie said, Ms. Hubbard said, they voted for November 25th. They haven't said anything about December 2nd, 9th, and 16th, and yet in our agreement with them, we're saying December 2nd, 9th, and 16th, and we're not saying November 25th. I have no problem. We just pencil in November 25th, so we have 4 dates, and then you can choose from all of them. But
I would say that since those dates are up in the air, that we adjust this at a later date when that's more clear.
okay,
We have
okay.
the authority to do that, Patrick?
Yes, this contract could be amended.
All right. Anybody else?
All those in favor?
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No?
No,
No.
Or Perry, where were you?
I said aye.
Motion carries. We want to get him back in here. D, a motion approving resolution R 23-22.
A resolution approving the extension of the agreement for the provision of residential waste disposal services and curbside recycling for the city of Belton with WCA of Missouri LLC for a term of 3 years beginning August 1, 2023.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Are we all debated out yet?
Not even started, unfortunately.
Fair enough. All right, yeah, this resolution would essentially allow us to, it would be a 3-year extension of our current agreement. We did get a letter from, I think I've shared this with most of the council members, but the public should probably know this. We did get a letter from our trash company saying that they would raise the rates $1.01. It was actually 7% CPI, which would have resulted in a $1.01 increase in our trash rates. But then we got this contract for this 3-year extension, which would include trash and curbside recycling. And that $1 was not factored in there. So that tells me that if we don't go with recycling, then our bill's going to go up $1 and a penny, which we would have to pass along to customers most likely. I guess we don't have to. That's a decision we can make. But without it, then we're going up to about, it's a $6 increase total. That includes our carts. And I think that we can take some of the money that we're using for carts in our current bills and dedicate it toward that. We can use a little bit of money in our fund balance. And so I would definitely welcome discussion on what the rate cap would be for residents as part of this resolution, if you so choose to do. For instance, I think that it would be very fair for us to eat half of that cost with the current funding mechanisms and pass along essentially a $3 per resident increase, or cap it at $3 at the most, and we can always hone in on that when we get a little closer to the date, because it wouldn't take effect until August 1st. So,
Go ahead.
I passed out a pamphlet, something I came up with the mayor. We sat down and had a conversation on how we think we could get this done. Currently, our trash, I'm not a wordsmith like Councilwoman Lawson, so my wording might not be perfect in here, so I apologize up front. But my trash service right now, they say is at $14.41, and our bin cost right now, we're charging residents is $1.80, so it's $16.21. And then adding the $6 on there. So what Joe had said is we can drop, since we don't have to buy the bins anymore, we can drop the bin costs. I think we need to keep something in there, so I kept 50 cents in there so we can buy bins in the future. That would drop trash actually down to $14.91 when we take off the 30 cents or $1.30 from that. Currently, our budget over cash, that's right terminology, right? Our cash is we have about $465,000 in the utility budget from the bins that we've taken money from the residents over the past 4 years, and keeping it at 50 cents. If you go down to, let's say, page 2, it talks about we have 750 meters. I have the basic 75?
So 7850.
7850. I think that's what you told me, right?
yeah,
About
it's
7,800 meters?
7,800 households that would be affected,
Yeah.
yes.
If we pay $3 the first year from the utility account and the residents pay $3, second year, we bump that up $1 for the residents, down $1 from the utility. And then the third year, we're basically, the resident will pay $5 and the utility account will still pay $1. We would actually deplete that utility account that we had in there. It would leave us about $60,000 to buy bins if we still need to buy bins for residents. The second line down there basically, so the first year talks about what the utility account would pay, so that would be $565,000. Down below, that's going to talk about the money that we generate in the utility account. So we have $465,000 each year. We're going to generate about $47,000 based off the current meters that I have there, the 7850. So going forward, especially in the first year, if you look at it, we actually are being charged $16.79 right now if you look at your bill. So our bill is $16.79, and that first year, if we do this proposal, it's my thoughts. Trash would be $14.99, recycling would be $3 is what they would see on their bill, and the total amount would be $17.91. We would actually only be adding $1.12 to the utility bill for curbside recycling weekly for the first year. The second year would go up $1, the third year would go up another $1 from there. It's a 3-year contract, so after 3 years, we can always reevaluate all of this, so.
And I'll remind folks that the resolution, we can amend it right now to put the exact rate. We could put a top number and come back and fine tune the exact rate if we decide to do so. This essentially is just giving the go-ahead, either yes or no, for us to move forward.
Well, and I wanted to make sure we have some type of a plan, so when we come back and do an ordinance that actually set rates, we have something that we can gravitate to and say, hey, we like this, we don't like it, someone else has a different proposal, you want to amend what I have here, it doesn't matter, but at least if we have some type of a dollar figure that we think we can get this done by, I mean, I think $1.12 adding on for weekly recycling is pretty cheap to get it started.
Go ahead.
So while my numbers, is she first?
No, you go.
Okay. While my numbers are small, they're not representative of any sample. I have not had a single individual call me or come to my meeting that says they want recycling or curbside recycling. The ones who have talked about it would prefer a drop-off, or they want to continue to go to Redbridge. They do not want curbside. So now the sample is small, about 14, 15 people's all. And I know that we talk about the survey. And the survey is got a 95% confidence level. But confidence level is not the same thing as accuracy because of sampling biases. Confidence means it didn't happen by chance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the survey is accurate because the types of people who responded may not be similar to the overall sample. Because, for example, those who don't give a, excuse my language, threw it in the trash, that represents the majority. They may have a different opinion than the few that responded. And so while I believe in the sample, I read a study today where while confidence level at 95% of most samples are actually only 60% accurate. So we can't always buy that the samples are 100% accurate. That just because we have a sample doesn't mean that it really is representative of what we need. But, so I just wanted to pass on what my citizens have said about recycling. And I've not had a single one call me and say, yes, I want curbside. Make sure we get it.
Go ahead, Angela.
Okay. I did just want to say, my citizens, for the most part, have all preferred curbside over the drop-off site. And if we are able to cap it at the $3 and be able to get a hardship policy for what citizens who could not afford up to that $3 could go through to possibly get that either waived or donated by a nonprofit, something like that, then I am absolutely all for the $3 curbside.
Hold on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to note and kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Clark said. Specifically, this resolution is an agreement between the city and WCA, and the rate that is stated within that resolution is the rate that the city has to pay, not passed along to the citizens. This resolution does not amend and cannot amend because it's a resolution. Section 11-106C of the Code of Ordinances, that is the actual document that imposes the rate for residential solid waste collection.
Well, that's
So
me.
does everybody understand what he just said? Okay.
No.
You don't?
Yeah, we'll have to come back with an ordinance to actually set the rate. So this is just to say, yes, we're going to
This
agree.
is what the city has to pay.
This is what we're going to pay. This is our agreement. We were going to start the service
Yeah.
on August 1st. And that's what this agreement would do. Now, if you want to do it, that's why I said I would, if you guys want to put something like, well, yes, we would do this with a $3 cap on the rate increase per user, and then we come back when we do the ordinance and we make sure that we're under the $3, then we'd be essentially following that.
Got it. Go ahead.
Councilmember Clark, are you using bin budget and utility account synonymously in this?
No, I'm just using, the utility account. The bin budget has a $465,000 overage from the years that we've been collecting on that and haven't bought bins. That's in our budget right now. I mean, if you look at 2024 budget, I think they have projected in there 765,000, but that's us keeping the $1.80 intact.
So then what's the utility account?
Utility account is anything water, sewer.
Yeah, your water bill, your sewer bill, your
So
trash bill.
it's a utility account, but it's specifically in the solid waste bin account.
To be
So the
fair,
utility account represents how much the city would eat to offset the rates for citizens.
Correct. And that's the money we have, cash on hand from the money we've collected over the last 4 years by charging that $1.80 for the bins.
So the bin budget and the utility account is the same?
Yes.
Okay. Speaking to my experience with residents, they are excited about curbside. People are excited about having the service of recycling. There is a vocal minority that has probably gotten in all of our ears to some degree, saying they don't want any additional costs. So I'm going to represent the folks that are excited about recycling because in my experience, that's a greater number of people.
Well, and I'll just bring up my little proposal that I put together. If we don't do recycling, I mean, this adds 8 cents to the bill for the first year. But I mean, it's not what our consumer pricing index increase is gonna be if we don't do recycling. They're gonna raise our rate 7%, I believe it is. So, I mean, this is 8 cents difference on what they're doing. And all we're trying to do today was show you some type of scenario that we can add recycling. And when we do an ordinance in the future, here's what we could do if you guys want to do it, something similar to this. I put something down, what I come up with the money in the budget, and trying to make it the most economical for people at least the first year to get it going. And studies have stated that curbside recycling will increase the amount of people recycling compared to a drop-off site. Meaning,
Well, I commend you on your figures. I don't understand this piece of paper, but I like your bottom line. And so,
I told you I'm not a wordsmith like Councilwoman Lawson. I probably should have went to her and how to draw it
well,
up.
you got all the numbers in the right columns anyway, and it seems to add up from what you said at the very back end. But we did have a Ward 4 meeting, and 8 people showed up, and all 8 of them were against recycling. On the other hand,
Curbside.
what did I say?
You said against recycling.
Okay, curbside recycling, and several of them think that it's more cost-effective to drive to Grandview or Harrisonville than to pay $1. Again, I've said this before, when I think of all the time I spend, I have 3 big bins. I got one left over from Jim's, one left over from Diefendorf's, or whoever they were. I got all these extra bins.
You're supposed to return those.
I know. Well, come and get it. It's full of plastic.
Call the police.
I got cardboard, I got plastic, I got paper, and I got metal. And I got it, every 2 nights, I got to take my mixed stuff and go into all these bins. Then sometimes I have to make 2 trips to Harrisonville because I don't have, even in a van, I don't have enough room for 4 big bins. And so, to me, curbside drop-off and the people that have come to me, other than the ones last night, were all for the most part, for curbside recycling. And thanks to some creative financing, I think we can pull it off with a minimal cost to our citizens.
Chris?
I also went to the Ward 4 Town Hall last night, and there was
no, he wasn't.
There wasn't a huge turnout. I think we had 6 people show up, but everybody's for recycling. They don't want to pay for recycling. And I brought up the point of, is everybody for the landfill going out in Raymore? And everybody said, no, definitely not. We're totally against that. But we somehow got to do something to keep these landfills from filling up. And I think the recycling is our only option. So if we don't do it now, there's just going to be we'll have a landfill next to Belton and we'll be fighting it. So we need to do something about it.
Prairie here.
Joe, didn't you say it's a 3-year contract and we could review it at the
Yeah,
end
it'd be a
of
3-year extension on our current contract with the new rates and the new service, and then it would have two 2-year extensions or options to
So
extend.
at the end of 3 years, you could review it and
yeah.
and negotiate?
Correct.
And so for 3 years, it would be almost minimal
And to me, yeah, that's a nice selling point for us. We originally thought it was going to be a 5-year deal. The 3-year deal is nice because now if the community really doesn't want to pay for it, they'll let us know, and then we'll have an easier way to go forward. It's the ultimate case
These
study.
3 years is going to be pretty much nothing.
Well, and if we're helping to supplement these costs for these 3 years, I think that's the whole point, is that we're going to try to help supplement this cost for 3 years, get us to that point, make sure that we really get an accurate read on whether people want this or not.
Brett?
I really have not had a single person approach me to tell me they wanted to spend $6 a month on curbside. I've had people say that they wouldn't mind having a drop-off, and I've had other people say that they already do it and they really don't want to change. They kind of like doing that. But I really have not had a single person come tell me, whether privately or definitely not at the meeting last night, that they're interested in it.
Dave?
One of the things I don't, down at the very bottom of the first page, if we drop the bin cost by $1.30, that's in the trash side, but I think how I look at it, the trash is the trash, but that would actually keep their overall bill only going up $4.70 after that 3-year period too, because we are dropping the bin cost because we don't have to purchase those bins anymore by $1.30 if we take this on. So realistically, after a 3-year period of time, their total cost would only go up $4.70 and not the full $6. So,
to be fair, CPI could play into that too.
yeah, it could after 3 years, yes. But I'm just saying, if everything stays intact as we know today,
I just don't want someone listening to say, well, in 3 years when we have to raise it by $5 or $6 because of CPI over the course of 3 years, then all of a sudden they're saying, well, you said it was only going to be $4.70.
Allison?
Bit of a pivot, but this is just praise for staff for running down the variety of ideas and options we threw at you. I appreciate that. This is a topic where we want to consider every angle, and I feel like you guys did a really good job doing the best you could to get the best proposal. Councilmember Clark, thanks for mathing it. Good job, everybody.
He had some help on that.
Yeah. Believe it or not.
I can't.
I
vouch,
said earlier
I
with the
can't
mayor.
vouch for the math yet, so I
Copy of this? You and Casey should grab one.
but I'm sure it's great.
You got something?
I think one thing people that are for the drop-off are forgetting, even though there will be no cost for them, it's still going to cost the city money, and that's going to come from somewhere.
I think even if we drop off, we still have to charge for it.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. So we can't forget that, and as much as it pains me to say this, and Chris stole it from Dave Clark because he said it first, we got to start recycling because otherwise we can't complain when they want to put a dump in our backyard. So it's got to happen, and it's looking like it's never going to get cheaper than now.
Well, I think, and if you go back to, I know there's been discussion about the survey. You go back to the survey, it's our understanding that if we have curbside recycling, that this could increase the amount of recycling that's happening in this community by doubling it, essentially. The survey indicated that 42% are currently doing it, and it'd go up to 84% if we had curbside, which would be a huge impact on our trash.
One of the things I didn't pass on, so 2 different scenarios. I have a brother who lives out in the county, pays $30 a month just for trash. So when I hear people talk about the cost of what we charge for trash and recycling, it's very low. And I think I have a Grandview resident that pays $33 a month because they got to go out and buy it on their own, and they're paying $33 a month just for trash and recycling, and they don't have the brush or the large pickup items either. So it's just one of those things that I think that what's GFL's given us, you said WCA, I don't know, I guess, are they still WCA or are they GFL?
The contract says still.
Oh, WCA, okay.
Doing business as, I suppose.
I was here when the last company was around, so, I mean, I'll always talk great about GFL, WCA, whatever they want to be called, but they've done a great job for us over the last 3 years. They've been our trash hauler, and I appreciate them coming, and I don't ever get complaints on them, so I thank them for doing their job.
I think we do have a very good working relationship with our current hauler at this point, and that definitely plays into this as well. Although I would caution you to be careful about throwing out all those higher numbers. I don't want them to get any ideas.
Right.
Someone in the audience.
Anybody else?
Oh, by the way, for Brett, I made this into a 14 font so you could read it better.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
65, you know.
Yeah, what it says here in a minute.
Yeah.
With that being said, what we're voting on tonight is the resolution that what the city will pay GFL or WCA, not what we're gonna charge the residents. That will come back when?
That we can do an ordinance, we can start putting that together anytime between now and August 1st, 'cause that's when it would go into effect, so, yeah, we'll do it right away.
Okay.
So once we approve this, we'll have recycling August 1st?
That's what the
Ish.
contract says.
All right.
We're holding to it.
I mean, we can take a month or so, but I think I'd rather do it sooner than later,
No, I
just so we can get the word out what the
Absolutely.
actual cost is gonna be and not,
yeah, we should bring it back for a first
I don't want
reading
people
in
to say
April
it's
for April
$6
11th.
and it's not gonna be $6, so.
Correct. Let's do it next meeting. We'll have an ordinance for you.
Everybody understand that? Excuse
Yep.
me. Any other discussion on item D? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item E, motion approving resolution.
I know you
Item E, motion approving resolution R 2023-23.
A resolution authorizing and approving the labor agreement between the City of Belton, Missouri and the Fraternal Order of Police, West Central Missouri Regional Lodge Number 50.
Present.
Second?
Motion and a second.
I'll be glad to go. Yeah, we've got
89.
our labor agreement with the police union, and it's not that
think it started
different
89.
essentially from what we just approved in the budget for most of the employees. It's they're getting a 7.5% COLA, 2.5% step, is the gist of it. The other major financial consideration, which amounts to about $20-some thousand, is not a huge one, is the 50-cent differential pay for nighttime. Night shift employees as well is one of the other things that we've given them that we agreed upon. So those are the two major differences. There are a couple of real minor things in there as well that are different, but for the most part, those are the two big financial considerations.
Any questions? Go ahead.
What? These seem minor to me, but they're probably not to people that are under this agreement. Several places it says paid leave, but then under funeral leave, it just says leave. Mm-hmm. Is leave defined as paid or unpaid?
That depends on the nature of the leave.
Well, it's not defined. So, I mean, if a police officer's mother died and they went to the funeral, then he has a debate with his supervisor whether or not
That's usually paid leave, yes.
It's usually paid leave.
That would be paid leave, yes.
Funeral leave, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because other places it specifically says paid leave. Under funerals, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say the word paid. And then on page 124, it says the second or third step in arguing against a suspension or whatever goes to the assistant city council. Assistant city manager. Do we have assistant city manager?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. I thought maybe I missed something while I was asleep.
Anybody else? Chief, you have anything?
I thought the negotiations went really, really well. Both parties got along really good, and we worked together on getting this done. And I know that the union is very excited about bidding for shifts based on seniority.
So does that mean they're not changing shifts every year then, or are they still changing?
They would bid in October. They'd change in January, I believe.
And they voted on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. F, motion approving resolution R 2023-24.
A resolution approving a contract for services with Heartland Traffic Services, Inc. for the marking and striping project in the not-to-exceed amount of $206,550.53.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You want to throw anything in here?
Yeah, I would like to just make a couple comments about it. This is our contract to do all our striping and marking throughout the city. That's marking arrows, crosswalks, all those different things throughout town. We have actually bid this job 3 different times over the last year, not getting any successful bidders until now. We only have one bidder, and normally that's something we reject the bids when we only have one bidder. But because we haven't had a series of bidders in this job, this type of work, we went and looked at other cities to see what their prices were to compare them to make sure it wasn't too high. And so it is comparable to other cities like Lee Summit and Blue Springs around us, Independence. And so we feel it's a fair price and we're going to get the service we need. One of the things that has happened in the striping industry in Kansas City is we used to have about 8 or 10 different people who did striping. And now one company has decided to purchase the other companies. And so one company now owns, I think, 4 or 5 of the other companies that used to do it and used to bid this type of work. And so now we're down to very few people who actually bid it. And when we call them up to try to get in their schedule, they said, well, we'll be available like 3 years from now. And so it's gotten kind of tough. So if you're interested in getting the striping business, there's probably an opportunity for you right now. But we just recommend going forward with this bid, even though there's one bidder.
Any
I just had a
questions? Go ahead.
quick question. It didn't say anything in here, maybe it doesn't have to, but who sets up the detour signs and barricades for when they're striping a particular crosswalk or whatever? Is that a city responsibility or their responsibility?
Their responsibility to set it up.
Okay, it didn't say that in here, but.
Most of the striping that's done is done just, they stripe and do it and the paint dries in less than a minute.
Okay.
And so there is no signing or anything with it. It's just a
Oh,
team
okay.
of trucks that go and do it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Just curious, is there any particular road that they will not be striping?
No, they should be, the program calls for doing all the stripes that we have. Now, that's not saying that we might have missed something, so we should be striping everything.
Well, they're not doing state highway.
That's your job. You got to keep an eye on them and follow them around. And
They're not doing roads that didn't have striping before.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
They're just doing the center and the outside and the turns and all that?
Correct.
And the crosswalks.
Yeah. Well, I would second what Greg said, is that for 2 years now, it's been 2 years since they repaved Cedar Street, which is Y Highway, which is a state highway, and I've called every 6 weeks and asked them, when are you going to come back and stripe? And we're on the list, but we're probably 100 down. So striping is, maybe we should go into business and do striping. I don't know. It's hard to get stripers.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Consent agenda, one motion, non-debatable, to approve recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove D and E.
D and E. All right. Anybody else? All in favor of consent agenda minus D and E?
Yay.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D, motion approving resolution R 2023-27.
A resolution approving a contract for services with Major Abatement, lowest and best bidder for the Oak Hill Asbestos Remediation Project in the not-to-exceed amount of $35,600.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilman Powell.
Right. In reading our general agreement with most contractors, it says that it's required to have a 10-hour OSHA course. But for doing asbestos removal, that you have anywhere from 3 to 5 day courses for asbestos removal. And I went on the website of this company, and they don't really say that they have the training to do this. Are we confident that they, or in their proposal, I mean, I know we didn't get their whole RFP response or whatever, but are we confident that they're a trained group?
Yes, everybody who does asbestos removal has to be licensed to do it. And so all the companies who bid it are licensed to do it, and I'll go back and make sure that they all have the proper license. And the training that we put in all our contracts is the minimal safety training that they have to have.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that's the only training that they have.
Okay, well then, also the agreement, and again, it's our words, not their words, but it says, the city is the sole judge to judge whether the project is complete. But if you want to check and see if asbestos has been fully removed, you got to do wipe tests, you got to take it to a laboratory, and both of those things have to be certified. So are we going to hire a certified person to do the wipe testing and then take it to a certified lab, or are we going to give that responsibility to Major?
No, we actually are contracting with an asbestos removal inspector because we are not qualified to do that work.
Okay.
And so we are contracting a third person to do the inspection work.
The agreement just gives us
Perfect.
the power to say yes or no and hire someone else. The agreement just gives us the power to say it's on us to hire someone.
Okay, great. Well, that's what I had for D.
Anybody else on item D? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E, motion approving resolution R23-28.
A resolution approving a contract for services with Caw Valley Companies, lowest and best bidder, for the Oak Hill demolition project in the not-to-exceed amount of $39,400.
Present.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Councilman Powell.
This is really minor. On page 236, it says the contract will be awarded prior to the end of March 2022, so it just has to be changed to 2023. I think, unless we're in a time warp here. I don't know. So what'd you call those? You called it something earlier. There was some kind of error.
Scribner's error.
Yeah, it's a Scribner's error. That's what we call it. Okay, that's all I had.
Anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. City Council liaison reports.
Yeah, a couple updates of parks programming coming up this weekend through April. This Saturday is the Easter egg hunt, 11 a.m. sharp at Memorial Park. Eggs will be spread out on all the ball fields there. And in a heartwarming detail, some of the 8,000 eggs were stuffed by our neighbors who hang out at the senior center. That's pretty cool. Again, just looking at April, there's a paint party for kids on April 21st. They're launching the Junior Disc Golf League, which is new, I believe, next week. The Spring Craft Fair is April 15th at High Blue. And they are hiring for seasonal jobs. You can be a lifeguard as young as 15, I believe. So if you know any folks looking for seasonal work part-time with the parks, we could use them.
Any questions? How come you got the times? I didn't get the times last time. Just
He
kidding.
didn't get the Easter
Job
egg thing
security.
either.
Anybody else on liaison reports?
Yeah, well, I forget the date, but anyway, the TDD, since our last meeting, met. As I reported last time, they lost their loan arrangement when Great Western Bank was taken over by another bank. So they're looking for new funding still for the Mullen Road expansion project. They're also watching SB 161 in the Missouri Senate, which would eliminate the 1% food tax, which is a significant contributor to the TDD's funding, because in the two of the main companies are Aldi's and Hy-Vee. So if that gets passed, then they got to look even closer at their funding and how they're going to get a loan to do this, or get bonds to do this project. Again, though, the schedule is still to start in fall 2023, when all the utilities are scheduled to be relocated.
Any questions? Any other council reports from the council? And just to give everybody a heads up, we're going to change the kind of way we kind of do this next meeting. We're going to consolidate the three city council communications and the mayor's communications all in one. We're just going to start at one end and go around.
There you go.
So we're gonna consolidate the three into one, but, go ahead, Chris, you got anything?
All I know is that we have the Cinco de Mayo up on Main Street, May 5th. We're a little ways from it, but
It'll be here before we
keep it
know
in mind. It'll
Yep.
be coming up fast.
Perry,
No, I don't have anything.
Dave,
I got the fill-in for the mayor the other day, did a ribbon cutting for the city and the chamber across the street at Habitat Architects, and if there's a chance that you're walking by over there on a Saturday and you can get in there and look in it, I mean, they did a wonderful job of remodeling that building and basically taking it back to the original form. So, neat organization in our downtown, so it's kind of neat to learn what they do and see what they've done to that building. So, have the Old Navy ribbon cutting this Saturday, so anybody that wants to come out Saturday at 10 o'clock for Old Navy. I think the mayor always goes out of town when these ribbon cuttings happen, but I'll be there doing that one too. So if anybody wants to come out and support Old Navy, that's Saturday at 10 o'clock.
We had a very short planning commission meeting. We had a public hearing for the rental inspection, and nobody talked, if I recall correctly.
one lady
So-
did.
One, two?
One lady did.
I thought they signed up, but they didn't talk.
One did.
Okay.
One came up and talked. But anyways, yeah, go ahead.
You guys had the same meeting, all right?
I apparently not. And then what we just went over, the capital improvement program.
Rob, you got any more?
No, although I think we all got a note that the Bridge Over Troubled Water is having an open house on Tuesday, noon to 2.
Do that one too.
Put
You
that
gotta
on
do
his
that one
schedule.
too. What?
Yes, put that on
Dave
his
just
schedule.
put it on a schedule.
Open house when, Tuesday?
Noon to 2 on March 28th.
They had it.
Oh, they had,
They had it already.
They have, yeah, we got it.
okay.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Brett, you got anything?
We had a Ward 4 meeting yesterday. It was small, but it was nice to have the people come out, and I want to thank them, and we will continue to have more of them.
All right, I got a few things. What? Oh. Angela, you got anything? You're so
I
quiet.
don't have anything. We're all good.
You're so quiet. Okay.
That's a
I got-
first.
Go ahead.
Never
what?
been accused of that.
Oh, okay. I got a few things. I did attend the training center ribbon cutting last week. I don't remember when it was, someday.
21st.
But if you
Tuesday.
haven't been out there, take a trip out there. It's a wonderful place, and it's gonna do wonders for the region. I want to thank everybody that put their time and heart into that, especially Carolyn. It's gonna be a wonderful thing, and everybody, North Point, school board, school district, West Central, and MCC Community College. They all played a huge role in it, and I just want to thank everybody. I did get a chance to go by the Habitat thing after I got done doing what I was doing, and met with the two guys, the principal guys, and it stopped by there. It's pretty cool what they do and what they've done to that building. I want to thank everybody that worked on the budget and getting that done with what we've gone through the last year. So I want to thank everybody for that. And I want to thank everybody that worked on the recycling to get it to where we got it to, and the funding, how we got it to. I want to thank everybody for that as well. That's all I have. You got anything?
I have a few things. Take your sons and daughters to work day at the city of Belton is going to be Friday, April 27th in the morning, and I have an open invitation if any of the council members would like to participate in that. There's going to be a first thing as part of that. They're going to do an introductory period, and there's going to be special instruction from the mayor, and if you guys want to be part of that, you're more than welcome to join us. Again, that's April 27th in the morning, so.
April 27th?
27th.
Is it a Friday?
It might be a Thursday. It's April 27th. The date's right. The day might have been wrong. So it's Thursday. Thanks, Carla. But yes, if you're interested in that, just let me know, and we'll get you on that agenda. All right. Also, we are creating a culture of higher performance leadership training for 30 of our employees, April 12th to the 14th. And we are going to be holding that training at the new training and technical center of Cass County. So we're making use of the new facility we just had the ribbon cutting in. And I'm excited about that because it really is going to kickstart a lot of the culture stuff that we already are doing in a lot of levels in our organization, but it should kind of really take off from there. It's a very, very intense and awesome program. So, and then Southview Commerce Center Building 4, the mayor mentioned the ribbon cutting we had on the 21st. Hillman, a hardware distributor, is taking about 60% of that building, and they are going to be open here in the next few weeks. So they're coming from California. So that's a welcome addition to our community. And then I want to remind everybody that the second May meeting has been moved from May 23rd to May 30th, just to highlight, I know we already sent out communication to everybody on that, on the council, but I want to let the public know as well that the second May meeting is going to be on May 30th. The reason for that move is there's a couple of us, the mayor and I, are going to both be at ICSC trying to recruit businesses to come to Belton. And that's all I've got.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Carolyn backed me up here, but I think the new restaurant on Main Street, Enroll, is going to open up on April 12th?
Correct.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out their menu yet, that's where the tea room is. Interesting menu, and can't wait for them to open. I met the gentlemen that are owning it the other day at Habitat, so can't wait.
Anybody else? All right, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. Items for review and discussion. A, Chapter 353, OTB applicant.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, is $27,000. It's the 15th application, and notices for public hearing were sent out to the taxing jurisdiction.
Any questions? Item B, Oates contract for weekly service.
Yes, we have a contract for the Oates Bus provide weekly transportation to those who sign up for it, for businesses in Belton, and then on the fourth week of the month, they can travel to other businesses or other cities in the area. That contract is up for expiration, so it will be coming back to the council soon for renewal.
That's just our yearly contract, isn't it?
Yes.
How many days a week they get?
It's 1 day a week, 4 weeks a month. But there isn't a fifth.
Do we have does Oates take people to our senior center, or is that, because you're saying it's only 1 day, or is there a different transportation for that?
It's a separate contract for daily service to the senior center.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Item C, Tier Hotel update. I'm wondering what you were doing here.
You're not Scott Lyons.
Yeah, you don't look like Chief Lyons.
No. If I get my PowerPoint to come up here. There we go.
There you go.
Okay, once again, just wanted to update the council on the hotel motel tier program. I know you guys have a long agenda tonight, so I'll keep it short and sweet.
You might say who you are, too.
I'm sorry. I'm Lieutenant Dan Davis with Belton, Missouri Police Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back in 2018, the city passed an ordinance establishing a tier program for our lodging establishments here in the city, which basically rates the hotels based on their calls for service. The ordinance mandates the police department determine the number of calls for service each establishment had during a calendar year, divide that number by the number of rooms they have for rent, establishing a call for service ratio. This calculation must be done by January 31st each year. Not every call for service counts. Obviously, if a hotel has calls for service in regards to animal calls, medical calls, illegal dumping, things of that nature, they may not land on the call for service list. This is more about quality of life and actual personal and property crimes. Some of the crimes that do count against their call for service list include homicides, suicides, attempted suicides, suicidal parties, all sex offenses, robbery, burglary, larceny, narcotics violations, warrant arrests on the property, arson, suspicious activity, vehicles and persons, juvenile problems and arrests, runaways from the hotel or recovered at the hotel, disturbances, noise violations, disturbing the peace, vandalism, stolen autos and recovered stolen autos, protection order violations, child abuse and neglects, assist division of family services calls, harassment, trespassing, unless it's reported by the management, disorderly conduct, fighting in public, resisting or hindering the police, abandoned autos, weapons offenses, threats, and bomb calls. Concern was brought up early on the program could discourage lodging establishment owners and managers from calling the police when necessary. To negate this risk, each call on the previous list was examined to see if it was an instance where the hotel was calling for assistance in an effort to improve the conditions at the establishment. Instances such as these are not included in the call for service ratio. Once the call for service ratio has been determined, each establishment is placed in a tier based on the number of calls for service per room in the preceding year. The ratings are less than one half call for service per room per year is a tier 1 hotel. So 0 to 0.5. From 0.5 to 1 call for service per room is a tier 2, and a tier 3 hotel would have more than 1 call for service per room per year. Once the call for service ratio and the tier rating has been determined for the preceding year, the police department notifies the owner-operator of their tier rating by regular and certified mail. This notification also advises what steps the establishment needs to take based on their tier rating.
Tier 1 requirements, every hotel, whether they're 0 or 0.4 calls for service, would fall into Tier 1. They must maintain a guest log per state statute, make it available upon request to authorized city personnel. They must ensure the posting of registered sex offenders of permanent guests, which are more than 30 days, or any registered sex offenders that are employed. Tier 2 requirements add, have a lodging establishment operator or designee available on the premises at all times. To install and maintain an operational digital surveillance camera with recorder in the lobby, parking lots, indoor and outdoor common areas of the establishment, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Install adequate lighting in these areas as needed for the camera recorder to properly work. Retention of the video shall be for a period of 30 days. To obtain and document guest vehicle information, including make, model, color, and license plate number. To ensure all registered guests 18 years and older provide a government-issued ID, which will be photocopied and maintained at the establishment office during the length of the stay. Tier 3 requirements contain all the Tier 1 and 2 requirements, but also add, the hotel must provide a dedicated on-site security staff member from 6 p.m. through 6 a.m. 7 days a week. They must provide the Belton Police Chief or designee with the names and contact information for all lodging establishment operators and security staff. Provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week front desk personnel. They must install and maintain lighting in the lobby, parking lots, and indoor and outdoor common areas of the establishment. They must ensure parking passes are issued and recorded for all vehicles allowed to park on the premises, with each pass marked with the issue date and expiration date. All vehicles shall prominently display the pass on the front windshield. They must maintain a daily key or key card log. Each key or key card found to be missing must have its corresponding lock rekeyed prior to the room being rented. This is kind of an outdated requirement in that most of these are digital and they get programmed every time the room changes hands anyway. Each master key or key card found to be missing will require the establishment rekey corresponding lots. Records of all rooms being rekeyed shall be maintained by the lodging establishment operator for a period of 12 months. They must ensure all lodging establishment visitors sign in at the front desk, and those 18 years old or older provide government-issued ID, which will be photocopied and maintained at the establishment office. To ensure all lodging establishment visitors sign out at the front desk and leave the premises by 11 p.m. They must contact the Belton Police Chief or designee to discuss opportunities to prevent future crime on the premises. The lodging establishment office operator shall have 90 calendar days from the receipt of their tier classification notice to implement the tier requirements as specified in the article. A tier compliance inspection shall be conducted by the police department, fire department, and code enforcement department after the 90-day calendar period. Failure to comply. If the Belton Police Chief or designee with the code enforcement director or designee shall notify any non-compliant lodging establishment owner and operator of the non-compliance finding. Such written notice shall be directed by certified and registered U.S. mail, regular mail, postage paid to the business address on the business license application. Such written notice will include a non-compliant finding placard. The lodging establishment operator shall post in the vicinity of the registration desk, openly and conspicuously viewable by the public. The lodging establishment operator shall have 30 calendar days following the date of the initial notice to comply with the tier requirements. During this 30-day calendar period, no new rentals of guest rooms may be made to any transient or permanent guest. After the 30-day calendar period, a reinspection for tier compliance shall be conducted by the police department, fire department, and code enforcement. The Belton Police Chief or designee shall refer the non-compliant lodging establishment to the municipal court for any violation under this article and to the city clerk, business license official, to process under the administrative procedures of Chapter 6 Business License and Regulations. Our current tier ratings, for the first time since the inception of this program, every hotel in the city of Belton is at a Tier 1. Thank you. The programs have been quite successful. As you can see, several of these, they vary. Our highest tier rating or highest call for service ratio right now is the Econo Lodge, which averaged 0.45 calls per room in 2022. Does anybody on the council have any questions, need any clarification? Sure.
Dutchman's the one on North Scott, is behind Jan's Liquors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's about 8 units.
Yeah, it's 8 units. So in that particular situation, it wouldn't take much.
But
to push
are
their
they
tier
like
rating
daily
up.
rentals or monthly rentals now?
They're doing long-term rentals.
Yeah.
They don't have an office there. They don't rent by the night, or I think they rent it by the month.
Okay. Any other questions?
While you're here, why, I see this in the newspaper a lot, suicide party. What exactly is that?
That is somebody who's shown a desire or intent to commit suicide, but has not actually taken any physical steps to do so. Somebody who's saying that they want to kill themselves, but they haven't taken an action yet.
Okay.
So the action would be an attempted suicide. Somebody expressing those ideations would be a suicidal party.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Party of one.
Item D, on-call abatement contractors RFP.
Yep. Staff received 2 proposals for on-call services for code enforcement abatements, including mowing and trash junk debris removal. Staff is currently reviewing those proposals and has the option of selecting both contractors for the services. Having more than one contractor is beneficial during peak mowing season to help ensure that abatements are being completed in a timely manner. Those contracts would be effective for 3 years with the option of 2 additional 2-year period renewals, and once we finish those reviews, we will bring those forward to council.
Any questions? Item E. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Are we going to be taking care of the intersections or the under the interstate?
So our plan is to start working on this. It's not his contract. It's what we're going to do with Public Works crews. We're going to try to start maintaining more of the state's right of way and trying to do some mowing and trimming. You're going to see some significant tree cutting of, I wouldn't call them trees, but they're volunteer trees that are up in places that need to be removed to make the city of Belton look better, especially at our entry points.
Go ahead.
Is that going to be with the remote control lawnmower? Because that thing's cool.
Yeah, so it'll be 3 different ways. One will be just literally the old-fashioned chainsaw way. One will be with a regular mower that can mow the flat spots, but then anything that's the big slopes, yes, we're going to be using a remote control mower. We've actually been out using it.
Anybody else? Item E, UDC text amendments rental inspection program.
Yep. Staff has been working on developing a revised rental inspection program since last fall to bring forward to council for review and consideration. Staff started with the 2019 proposal and made adjustments based on the community feedback that we've received over the last several months. Staff believes that the proposed program that we plan on bringing forward addresses the concerns expressed by both landlords and tenants, while also meeting the intent of the program to protect tenants, preserve quality housing, and maintain and enhance quality or property values. The most significant revisions include only require inspections at unit turnover when the unit is unoccupied, with a recommended exception from the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee that an inspection be conducted every 5 years, regardless of occupancy. City staff will also conduct the inspections rather than a third-party inspector. Staff would like council's feedback on the effective date of the program. Staff is proposing a delayed start to give ample notice to landlords and tenants of the program requirements, as well as for internal improvements to help streamline the licensing and inspection process, which we are currently working with Central Square on developing. Based on this, it may be best to wait until July 1st, 2024, which will give us time to have Central Square operational, and it also coincides with the business license renewal period. Additional changes will need to be made to the business licensing requirements in Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinances, and staff is also working on determining the fee structure to accommodate the process. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposed rental inspection program at their meeting last Tuesday and held a public hearing. There was one landlord who asked questions and clarifications on a few items. The Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval of the program, which will be presented to the City Council for first reading on April 11th.
Any questions? Go ahead.
I know we'll see it prior to the next meeting. So the current proposal is at resident turns or every 5 years?
The proposal would be at turnover, or if there is no turnover, at every 5 years. And that was a recommendation, that was not a staff recommendation, that 5 years was added as a recommendation by the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Last night at the Ward 4 meeting where the 8 people were against curbside recycling. Anyway, they also said, and they were all homeowners, said, how much is this going to cost us? Because we said, as soon as we said that city employees would be doing it, they said, well, they'll probably have to hire some other people and we'll have to pay for it. But it sounds like what you're saying, you're considering putting that into an additional licensing cost. Is that
Yes,
true?
that would be
Okay.
the plan, and our goal is, at least for the first year, is to utilize existing staff and evaluate from there if we will need additional staff or not, but we believe that we can cover it with the current staff that we have.
The idea is to try and that's what the cost of it would be if they're, they're gonna charge, we're gonna charge per inspection or per year for the inspection essentially. Have that cost go toward any additional staff we may need to hire to fulfill that.
Go ahead.
I was here last time this came up, and my thoughts haven't changed. I like the fact that it's being done unoccupied. I like the fact that a renter can call the city and have it inspected every year as they wish. What I won't vote for is every 5-year. So if we have a 5-year, if it's occupied, I don't like that. I want it to be unoccupied. I'm assuming most rental units probably turn over every 2 to 3 years at the most. We're probably not talking about a lot of units or people that stay in a unit more than 5 years. So me personally, I would like to see the 5-year taken away and just make sure we do it when it's unoccupied.
Go ahead.
I'll agree with you. City Manager Warren and Councilmember Richardson and I talked about this, being able to do it at business license applications and at turns when the water goes to be changed. That would be the trigger to say, oh, it's time for an inspection because you're turning again. So just along that line of thought, I agree, and I think there's a good method to do that, but it sounds like the proposal will be built on the recommendation from the committee, or will this be considered in the final proposal, what we're adding
You guys
here?
have final say, so the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee is just one of those, it's not ad hoc, but it's one of those committees set up to look at things like this, and they offer the recommendations, and it's not statutorily set like the Planning Commission, so you guys can take it or leave it. You guys can ask for that 5-year requirement to be taken out, and we'll take it out. So if most people think that's the case, then
I would like to see the 5-year thing removed. I think
I would too.
only for unoccupied units.
I think most units are gonna be like I said, they'll probably turn over every, I'd like to see a stat. I don't know if we have stats like that, but I bet you they turn over every 2 to 3 years. And
you're right. We're talking about probably definitely less than 5%. It might even be less than 1% of all the renters that stay more than.
And typically what you're dealing with is you have a great landlord and a great tenant that are getting along, so why should we interfere with that relationship?
Fair enough.
Because they can always invite us in if they wanted to.
Good.
Go ahead, Angela.
I was just going to say, from my position as the daughter of someone who does own a rental company business, most of their tenants are there for longer than 5 years. I would say maybe 10% is turned over every 2 to 3 years. I think that it very much so will depend on the landlord and what kind of business they run. I don't see an issue with once every 5 years if there's not been turnover. Now, I mean, if there was turnover, they don't need to, still do one more time just for that 5 years, but just during that, turnover is great. But I do feel that there is still a need there for the once every 5 years, because a lot of times people can get in a situation where they feel stuck and they don't feel they can leave a slumlord situation, and they also don't feel like they can call in and request someone to come out. They don't financially, they can't move, and they also don't feel they can do anything with the city as well. So I do feel that 5-year time period is far enough apart that if they're inconvenienced one time per 5 years, it would do more good than it would do harm.
Brett.
Could it be where we offer at the 5-year point for the current resident?
current resident can call in and say, I want to
Yeah, I know,
inspect.
but if they're in that position to where they're feeling like they can't because of the conditions.
Well, from what I heard from a couple of people last night at our ward meeting, not during the meeting, but afterwards, is that, at least in our neighborhood, there's at least one or two landlords, and not any related to Angela, that are threatening tenants and say, if this comes in, and if we have to do inspections, it's all gonna fall on you. Anything that happens, we're gonna pass on to you, and in fact, we might even double your rent. So people are already getting threatened, and maybe that's a police issue, I don't know. Nobody's come to me directly, but I've heard it second, third hand, that this is one of the reasons why routinely it should be done 5 years, 6 years, 4 years, I don't know, but it should routinely be done and not fall on even an anonymous call from the tenant.
I will say that that type of tactic is the exact reason why we need a program like this, because you have landlords that will heavy-handedly threaten their tenants into submission to the point where they won't report anything, and that's why this thing needs to have some legs somehow.
With this plan that we're trying to develop is gonna come a minimal fee per year, per unit. And, if landlords wanna double the rent because of that minimal fee, I don't know that we'll ever fix that. But the minimal fee that we're trying to develop will take in the fact of they won't have to pay for inspections. That yearly fee will pay for all inspections.
And business license.
And their business license.
And we're looking at the amount would be no more than $5 per month per unit. So there's no reason that rents should double because of this unless the landlord's just not being fair with the tenant.
Well, a perfectly great program would be one where we could perceive who the good guys are and who the bad guys are and just focus on the bad guys, but unfortunately.
I've always said that this is going to make the bad landlords better and the good landlords better.
I hope
Bad
so, yeah.
landlords good and the good landlords better. So, Angela, go ahead.
I did have two other concerns with it. One being identifying how many rental properties actually have a business license currently. I was still waiting on that information from Joe as to how many we actually have right now. I know we have a really high percentage of rentals, and I'm concerned that very few of them actually got their business license. So I want to make sure that as many properties that are rentals are actually included in this, so that we don't have very many that are, just getting around the ropes, basically. And then my other concern, and I'm hoping maybe there's some insight on this, is I know that we took bugs and mold out of the mix. My concern, and I do understand that we're not trained for that. My concern is that those are the two biggest issues that I've heard from renters over the last several years that have, come to me asking, what are my, what can I do? How do I get this mold situation taken care of? Or, I am completely infested with bugs. Bed bugs was a huge issue for one of our properties, not my family's properties, one of the properties in Belton. And the bugs were going from neighbor to neighbor. So I guess my concern is if we're not able to look at that at all, I mean, I get that we can't, tell, okay, yes, they have 2 bugs. No, but an infestation, I feel like, doesn't need that much training. If you go into someone's house and there's rats' nests everywhere and evidence of mice everywhere, that's a pretty good indicator. And if you go in somewhere and you see a bunch of mold, I don't think that they necessarily need to know, oh, is it black mold or what kind of mold? It's mold and shouldn't be there. It needs to be treated and taken care of. So maybe there's some more information I need on that.
Go ahead.
Well, Chris, you want to go before? You had your hand up
Did
first.
she want to answer to that?
I didn't hear what you.
Oh.
I can address some of that if you'd like.
Yeah, go
before we
ahead.
move on.
Go ahead.
I don't know that there's ever going to be a 100% perfect mode to identify and hold accountable all of the landlords, essentially. But we have a good way to identify the vast majority of them. That's through utility billing, essentially. So water bills will get a good chunk of them, electric bills can get another chunk of those, and so we can identify those folks because it's pretty easy to identify when the owner of record is different from the person that's on the account, and if there just happens to be a special set of circumstances, they can come clear it up with us, and then they won't be considered a rental, right? But we do have ways to identify a lot of those, and so we haven't done a great job of policing that to date because since we put in the business license requirement. But now that we're going to be doing these inspections on a regular basis, we'll have more of an impetus to actually pay more attention to that.
My concern on the 5-year, I'm not totally against the 5-year, but I think if somebody was in there over 5 years and they refused to let you do an inspection, is there a waiver that maybe we could do that the tenant themselves could sign off that they don't want to have if they've been there more than 5 years? That's a possibility. And my other concern was what Angela said on the amount of renters that aren't registered with the city. That's the other, I think, and that was the big concern in the meeting that we had. So that's another big issue that we need to get on.
I'll just go back, being here in 2019, I think, when this came up the first time, just some of the stuff that was brought up was unoccupied city at that time wasn't willing to go through that process. I like what we've done. We had a meeting where landlords and tenants can come out and listen, and we listened to what they said, and we modified it. I still go back to, I think majority of us up here we want to start something. I think let's start with majority of us agree with, and let's do it when it's unoccupied. If we see an issue going forward in the near future, we can always modify it. So let's start with something that's basic and make it unoccupied, no matter if it's 2 years or 10 years, and again, allow the residents to call in. But I know if the 5-year thing is in there, I won't vote for it just because I have tenants that tell me they don't want us in there, and they have great landlords and they don't want that. So if it's unoccupied, I will support this 100%.
But on the 5-year, what if there's a waiver where the tenants could sign a waiver and say, I don't want
the same thing that she said up there a minute ago. They could be threatened by their landlord if you don't sign that waiver. I mean, we're always going to be in that what if or going back and forth. I mean, just like I talked to one of our residents today about what she's seen at a place. When our discussion 3 years ago is if somebody is in need of improvements, and we go in there and we see nothing but mold and filthy living conditions and whatever, we're going to kick them out. But they said, well, if we don't have something, that place is never going to be approved. But, I mean, but if it's unoccupied, typically I hope that people don't live in bad conditions very long.
Exactly.
I mean, our goal is to get into these houses and look at them originally, but if you have a tenant and a landlord that has a good relationship, I don't want to mess with that.
Anybody else? Anything else?
I know we didn't really address the second part of Angela's questions about the infestations and the mold and whatnot, and I think that's a very, very fair point. The only thing I might say that reason why we might not want to add that from the start is from the same rationale that Councilmember Clark just mentioned. Let's bring in the broadest, least restrictive version of this to start, and then as we see issues that arise with it, we can always bring it back to you guys and say, okay, here's what we're seeing. We think we need to tweak this to allow for mold or to allow for infestation or to maybe every 5 years we do think we need to get in there because we have a certain issue. We could bring that back to you. So I almost think that the broader and the least restrictive version of this might be the way to start, and then we can hone it in as we find things.
Go ahead.
One of my concerns is corporate ownerships, not the individuals that have 3 or 4 homes that live in here and everyone knows them. And so I'm still pushing that we need to have an actual name, not companies, and companies after companies after companies, so that way we have someone who can literally legally sign documents and that their name is attached to the business license or whatever we decide to do that. I think it's extremely important that we have an actual contact rather than some company who's got another company.
I think that's a fair point. I think Patrick has mentioned he's going to research that to see if we have the right to put that into our city language. Sometimes statutorily we don't have that right. So he's going to check into that, and if we do, I think maybe we bring that back as a separate issue, and I think there'd be a lot of support for that. I think it's good to require a local agent, just so that way there's a local person that's required to be contacted for any issues that arise, whether it be this or any other issues that arise. So I think it's a very fair point.
I know that's one of the issues that they've had at Traditions. They don't know who to contact.
Well, and I mean, I agree with you. My whole thing is the local ownership is who I don't want to hurt. I mean, the corporations are ones that we got to make sure we're protecting the tenants from, so.
Anybody else? Item F, U-Haul rezoning preliminary development plan.
We are currently reviewing an application for a rezoning and a preliminary development plan for a U-Haul moving and storage facility at Cornerstone Drive and Stone Ridge Drive behind the Casey's on East 163rd Street. The project includes 2 indoor storage buildings, truck and trailer rentals, and a retail sales area for boxes and related moving supplies. Under the current code, a rezoning to M1 light industrial is required to permit a storage facility and vehicle rental. A public hearing will be held for the rezoning of the development plan at the Tuesday, April 4th Planning Commission.
Any questions?
I
Item
have
G.
one.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you. So rezoning this for U-Haul, we're considering this because it's not in the North Scott corridor. Is that what I'm understanding?
I think that there's parts of the North Scott corridor that actually would be on the northern edge of the North Scott corridor that actually this would be potentially a reasonable request, I believe, based on current zoning. So this is not something that would be restricted in the entire North Scott corridor plan necessarily. And just for clarification, this specific project and other projects like it, the staff would be very favorable toward bringing forward on the north section of North Scott. This is indoor climate controlled. It looks like an office building essentially. It's very, it's a very updated type of storage. It's not the typical old metal outdoor storage units you're used to seeing. This has a lot more, like I said, office feel to it.
So would it be a different zoning from what the other 2 had proposed then? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, quite a bit. Kind of.
Same zoning, but it's just this one's just not in the North Scott overlay district.
And it goes from C2 to M1?
It's M1, yes. M1 is something that we would welcome, and as far as the flex zoning we talk about on the north end of North Scott, M1 is part of that essentially.
Well, and there's M1 right behind this thing too, so it fits into the area where it's going to. So it's not like it's
not spot zoning.
Well, they're probably a C2, but yeah. But all that stuff behind there is all in light industrial. Was Matt showing us something?
I think he's going to the next one.
Going to the next one.
Oh. Hell, he's already moved on. Look at him go.
Anybody else on item F? Item G, UDC text amendment, land use table.
So over the past several months, we have been working on a complete rewrite of Chapter 40, which includes the land use table and special and conditional use standards. So there are several reasons for the review and proposed text amendments that will be coming forward, which would include repealing and replacing that entire chapter. The last significant update was completed in 2011 when the current UDC was adopted. Since that time, we've adopted the North Scott overlay and the Old Town Belton overlay. We've also had significant growth in the commercial and industrial sectors of the community, as well as changes in technology and the economy that have led to creation and evolution of new and existing land uses. So the primary reason for these changes would ensure that Belton has a competitive advantage in the region based on those land uses. And our goal is to also make it more user-friendly, which will include a new land use table, definitions, and use standards all in one chapter. Currently, those are scattered throughout 3 different chapters in the code, which does create some confusion from applicants and potential developers and business owners. Currently, we have 5 use groups that are very generic. We are proposing to expand that to 13. So currently, we have residential, public and civic, commercial, industrial, and other. We're proposing to expand that to a wider range of commercial and industrial uses that have a better breakdown of those use groups. So it would include commercial services, restaurant and retail, office, lodging, all the marijuana uses, auto-oriented arts and crafts manufacturing and production, industrial and waste-related uses would cover all of the commercial and industrial uses. There are several existing land uses that create confusion that we're proposing to consolidate. So currently there are 3 or 4 different types of government or public facility uses that all are pretty much allowed in the same zoning district and have a very similar definition. So we are proposing to consolidate that all into just one generic government and public safety facilities, offices, and service use. We have indoor and outdoor entertainment. Currently, we have some different recreational uses and then some indoor spectator event type uses. All of those essentially could be indoor entertainment and outdoor entertainment. We also just have a single motor vehicle repair type. We're proposing to break that down into minor, major, and heavy. So a minor example of a minor motor vehicle repair would be an oil change or a tire change business. A major repair would be more of a collision center where there may be more noise and nuisance included with that. And then heavy motor vehicle repair would be for repair of heavy equipment or construction type vehicles, commercial vehicles essentially. Same with vehicle and equipment sales. Currently, we just have a general equipment sales, and we're proposing to also add heavy, which better defines just the general passenger vehicle sales versus the sales of heavy equipment, whether that be buses, semi-trucks, those types of vehicles. And then we also have multiple warehouse, distribution, storage uses that essentially have the same definition in the current code. So we're proposing to just combine all those. That also provides some flexibility. For example, Southview Commerce Center is a good example where all of those facilities have essentially similar uses and they all function the same, but some of them may be distribution, whereas some of them may be warehouse. There are a number of new land uses that do need to be added to keep up with what some other communities are doing, as well as just some of the uses that we frequently get inquiries on. So those would include community gardens, homeless shelters. The homeless shelter could already technically be addressed in the code as a group living unclassified, but we do want to specifically call that out. Parks and open space is not specifically in the land use table. We are proposing to make some changes to the animal services, which would include a pet care services, which is a less intensive version of a veterinarian. Building and ground maintenance, social services, banquet facilities, event spaces, farmers markets, liquor store and tobacco shop, specifically because that was identified in the North Scott overlay, but is not defined anywhere else in our code. So to add that to make that work with the North Scott overlay is why we're adding that. RV parks and short-term rental would be added to the lodging category, but I did put an asterisk next to it because currently we are currently showing that as not allowed anywhere until we get some additional feedback on if the city council feels like we should allow one or both of those uses, and if so, what kind of regulations we should adopt to accommodate those. Outdoor storage yards, self-storage facilities, indoor climate controlled, and warehouse, breaking those down. Kind of as Joe mentioned, currently we just have a general mini storage, which has primarily been in the form of the traditional warehouse storage, which are garages generally. But the indoor climate control is something that we do want to add and specify as different than the warehouse facility. We're also adding recycling collection facilities, which essentially are neighborhood drop-off type facilities. And then the last one is an entirely new use group category that covers a number of arts and crafts manufacturing and production uses. So those are small scale uses that can fit essentially in any commercial or an industrial district. Some of the bigger updates related to uses that are permitted by right and uses that require special use permits or subject to conditions would include the expansion of public and semi-public facilities to be permitted in all or most zoning districts. So that would include libraries, religious assembly, and schools. Currently in our zoning district, or in our land use table, for whatever reason, those uses were only allowed in residential zoning districts, even though these are commonly found in commercial districts as well, particularly the library, and there's a number of churches that are in commercial and industrial districts. So we're proposing to expand that to be allowed in those zoning districts with a special use permit, and there may be some conditions that vary by the zoning district. Small retail, which are retail uses that are less than 100,000 square feet, are not currently permitted in business park and light industrial zoning districts. That's uncommon compared to most cities that do still allow small retail uses. So we're proposing to add that. One of the biggest changes would be we're recommending that all auto-oriented land uses be subject to special use approval. That would include car washes, vehicle repair, vehicle sales, and gas stations. Essentially, there's a lot of those uses currently are allowed by right in general commercial. What we could end up with though is those types of facilities being located in certain commercial areas where they may not be appropriate. So it just adds another layer of review there to determine if a car wash or a gas station is appropriate at this particular location. We are proposing to remove the special use permit requirement for body art services, more commonly known as tattoo shops. We have only had one that has come through over the last 5 years for a special use permit, and there were no concerns with where that was located. Unlike some of the other uses, like tobacco shops and pawn shops, there are no specific separation requirements for body art services, so there's really not anything that's being reviewed for compliance. So since that has been the case historically, we're just proposing to allow those by right in the zoning districts where they're currently allowed. And then for the storage facilities, we are proposing that they all be subject to special use permit approval, similar to the auto-oriented uses. But as part of that, we also are proposing to expand storage facilities for indoor climate controlled facilities to the business park zoning and the flex commercial industrial zoning district in the North Scott corridor. We know that there have been some interest in adding additional storage opportunities in North Scott, and we feel like this is a situation where we can have a storage facility that can meet the North Scott overlay design standards and still accommodate a storage product. Lastly, as I mentioned, the arts and crafts manufacturing and production uses would be permitted in all commercial and light industrial zoning districts, and we would also add a special use permit requirement to that, or option to that, in agricultural zoning when it's included as an agritourism use. So we don't currently have anything like that in the city limits, but a good example would be Johnson Farms, where they have agricultural use, but they also have retail type of components and special events related to the business. So that concludes that work session item. Are there any questions
Go ahead.
on any of those items or any feedback?
Just curious, because I zone out every once in a while because I'm old. What about, where would sports facilities, complexes go under?
So those, if they are a public facility that's operated by Parks and Rec, it would be Parks and Open Space. If it's a private facility, then it would fall under the indoor, outdoor entertainment.
Hey, can you go back one page? On the recycling collection facility? Those have to be on concrete pads though, correct?
Yeah, so these are mostly, and I think the way we have the standards written would be, typically you would find those in a church or a school parking lot where they may just have 2 or 3 bins for just neighborhood collection or collection by students or patrons.
Anybody else?
Okay.
Item H, future land use map review.
So the last item is related to the future land use map. And this is being brought forward just for kind of a general update of where we're at with it and how we're looking at this. So the last time that this map was amended was in 2014 to add the North Scott corridor overlay. And of course, we'll be reviewing it in greater depth with the comprehensive plan update that should hopefully be starting this summer. In looking at the future land use map and our current zoning and some of the inquiries that we are getting from businesses, we do have some challenges with the current map in that there are limited land areas that are designated for light industrial uses that permit accessory outdoor storage. So that's primarily in the form of contractor uses or various types of businesses that may have outdoor storage, whether that be equipment or materials such as building supplies. Right now, that's not permitted in the North Scott corridor, which would include, everything pretty much north of 58 Highway. There are a few of the light purple areas on Bell Ray Place or Cunningham Parkway or 173rd Street where that would be allowed, but essentially anywhere else in the city that would not be permitted. We also have no land area that's designated for heavy industrial uses, which could include a mix of, waste processing type facilities, as well as vehicle repair of heavy equipment, and other types of outdoor storage type facilities. And so one of the things where we would like some input from council on for both of these items is, are these items appropriate anywhere in the city, or is that something that when we do have people inquire about those types of uses, if it's best to steer them outside of the city? And looking at the future land use map, we don't really see a lot of good locations where those would fit that could potentially not create a nuisance to the surrounding properties or potentially deter future development of adjacent properties. So that's the concern that we have, but we just want to see if there's any input from council on those types of uses and if there's anywhere in the city that those would be appropriate.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns on Matt's request about the light industrial?
Yeah, Matt's asking about the stuff that's a little bit beyond the heavier industrial stuff. And the
above
reason
that,
why is because we do get requests every now and again for space for those. And if the answer is we thank you, but no thank you, that's fine. But we just want to make sure that everybody's on board with that. We don't want to turn someone away and then have them come back and say, well, the city of Belton doesn't want to work with us. Well, if you're heavy industrial, maybe if that's what we all decide, then yes, that's right. We don't want to work with heavy industrial anymore.
So if you have any ideas or thoughts in those areas, get them to Matt.
Well, there's really not much area within the city limits that would.
There's not an ideal spot for that right now. That's right. So we'd have to create one essentially. We'd have to designate an area where we would do that and essentially we'd be writing it off for future residential or commercial growth in most instances. I mean, there's ways to insulate around it eventually, but it has a cascading effect.
Any thoughts, get it to Matt. So, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So, question.
Go ahead.
So, next time, can you make the map go over both televisions? So we could see it a little better.
You didn't know we had two televisions either, did you?
Well, I did, but I don't think that works with this
Oh.
presentation.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to enter an executive session to discuss matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.1, and the record be closed and the meeting adjourned from there.
Second.
You gotta have a motion.
Gotta have
first.
a motion first. Motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Richardson?
Aye.
Howell?
Yes.
Bryan?
Aye.
Kraft?
Aye.
Goff?
Aye.
White?
Aye.
Lawson?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Mayor Larkey?
Yes, we stand adjourned.